Hello and welcome to the Simplified Organization podcast, a show for busy moms who are looking for practical help in managing their homes and families for God's glory. We keep it real without complaining, and we help women overcome the overwhelm and perfectionism that comes when we play the comparison game. I'm your host, Misty Winkler. I write and podcast at simplyconvivial.com about homemaking, homeschooling, and doing life cheerfully. I'm also the author of the Convivial Homeschool Gospel Encouragement for Keeping Your Sanity While Living and Learning Alongside Your Kids. Today I have part 2 of my conversation with Kortney Garrison. Kortney Garrison is a poet and a homeschooling mom of 3 who works from home as the community director for the Read Aloud Revival. She also blogs at kortneygarrison.com, and today she shows us her weekly system that she uses to keep the details of life on a somewhat even keel. Her resources and her experience in how she developed them will be an encouragement for you to also keep trying and find what works for you in your own situation. So let's return to my conversation with Kortney Garrison. All right. So I know that you have some great go-to resources and habits that you use to kind of keep life going as a home manager. So would you share with us about that?
Sure. Again, this has been very slow. It took me a long time to wrap my mind around the thing and then to sort of get us to a place where it was a tool that was helpful and actually useful for us. So there's 3 things that I use sort of on the regular, and that's our monthly calendar, which that's where all of our appointments are, classes, outside responsibilities, our weekly docket, and that's where I keep that on a clipboard with our homeschool stuff, and that's all of the work for the kids that I need to be checking, our meal plan, appointments that we have, everything is right there on one page and it's in front of my face. And all of that stuff gets populated during a weekly review from the monthly calendar. And then our monthly meal planning. This has been a game changer for me. I think I used to think of, buying groceries as a task, when in fact it is closer to a project, at least in my world. If I'm going to do a good job at it, I need to know what I'm going to buy and how much of it and what we have on hand and what I'm going to do with it after I buy it. And so it wasn't just a quick trip to the store that was the problem. It was all of those other steps. And so coming up with a meal matrix of, some categories throughout, I've got 7 categories, and then I pick out 4 iterations of those categories, and that's what we're eating. And so each week I look and see, how they're going to work together, and when's a busy night that we need to have a crock pot meal, and when we can have a more leisurely meal. But having that meal matrix and checking it, and for the weekly grocery run, that's been a big new thing in my world.
So explain how the meal matrix works.
Okay, so I use a blank calendar from ahumbleplace.com. It's a homeschool printable. It's free. It's pretty. And it's just a blank month at a glance calendar. And across the top, where there would be the 7 days of the week, I have 7 kinds of meals. So I've got, casseroles, soups, beans, because we have beans every Friday night, a Sabbath meal, a casserole that I can double. So I don't know, that's not 7, but I don't know what the others are. And then I have different kinds of soups. So I've got taco soup, and I've got potato soup, and I've got lentil soup, and I've got potato soup again. And so each week we're having soup on Tuesdays, but it's a different kind of soup. And so I don't have to make up everything. I just have to sort of figure out how the pieces all fit together.
Nice, a little fill
And
in
having that sort of thought out in advance has really streamlined the process for me of buying groceries and of making sure that we are not buying too much or not buying the wrong stuff, that we're using up what we're buying, that, and so it's been, I don't know, as my kids are, they're getting older, they're eating more food, they're more adventurous eaters. So I know that this will be a process that's shifting again as they still get bigger, but it's been a real sort of sanity saver for me to not have to do that work every week before I'm trying to buy groceries.
Yeah, for sure. Nice.
It was a lot of work up front, but it pays for itself in deep dividends.
And the upfront work is kind of picking those categories. And do you have like a resource for then like different kinds of soups, or do you go through cookbooks?
I definitely do not go through cookbooks. I am a very simple cook. Like I said, one of my weeks is always, we've got beans to eat. We can eat them with rice, or we can eat them with polenta, or we can eat them with tortillas, but we're going to have beans on Fridays. But so the soups that I have, I every once in a while I'll try to add in a new one, but it's a very, very basic stuff that are recipes that aren't really recipes,
Yes, the best kind.
Roast the chicken, mash the potatoes. That's dinner.
So when do you do your weekly review and kind of go through all of this? And about how long does that take you?
A lot longer than I think it should, or a lot longer than I was ever planning for before, I think. So I kind of need to do it in a couple of steps. I don't ever have a large enough chunk, or I think actually probably part of it is my brain just needs time to ruminate on the things, to sort of, like I said, to make all of the pieces fit together, because every week is basically the same, but we have different appointments and things are, come up. So just figuring out all of those things. And then there's all of the homeschool prep that I have to do as well. And that is not necessarily a part of the weekly review, but that needs to happen every week reliably. And so it kind of gets shuffled in there. So Thursdays and Fridays, I spend all of the time during school where I'm not actively helping somebody or doing morning time, I'm working on the morning review, or on the weekly review, excuse me.
Well, that's a nice way to have a time for it without being super rigid in your schedule. It's like, this, in whatever pockets of time I have, these are the things I'm going to be working on.
And I think that, like I said, it kind of is more how my brain works. It wasn't working for me to sit down with a 30-minute block on Saturday morning. I wasn't able to sort of like process all of the stuff that needed to be processed. So having more time, more unfocused time was better for me.
Nice. And I think that's another important thing to just point out in all of these, is that it takes time to develop and try things out and come up with maybe sometimes what doesn't work first. Sometimes we need to try things and just figure out what doesn't work before we figure out what is going to work.
Yeah. And that was a slow process for me.
Right. Well, this has been such a helpful conversation. Thank you so much, Kortney, for joining me today and sharing your insights and what you've learned and experimented with. And I hope it helps a lot of people, feel more comfortable experimenting with their own options. And I know you have some resources on your blog about your tools, right? I'll put the link in the description for sure.
Yeah, I've got a copy of my weekly docket that that you can, it's in Google Docs. And so you can click file, make a copy, and edit it for your family for what you need.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You can find the links to the calendar from A Humble Place that Kortney mentioned, as well as her weekly docket printable. That's a Google document that she is sharing with us, in the show notes, the description below, or go to simplyconvivial.com/Kortney, Kortney, to find Kortney's resources. As you try to figure out what will help your family's week flow more smoothly, remember that iterating is the way to go. Iterating and baby steps. Try something, figure out what works and what doesn't work, to make another tweak and take another baby step And this is the process of managing life well. And as you do, always also repent, rejoice, repeat.